Today, I want to talk more about why I think that iOS is a more productive operating system than a traditional desktop operating system. We're going to cover a few points as we go. We're going to cover, kind of where desktops came from, why I don't think that they're still the best option, and then some other ways that I think iOS is really more productive or allows you to focus more on your work than the traditional desktop operating system. Now, let's start actually with, my hypothesis. And my hypothesis goes multiple monitors and fast switching allowed by traditional computer operating systems make it so easy to get distracted. Thus, the less capable operating system found in iOS allows for more focus and productivity because you can't easily clutter up your working environment. Now, to dig in a little bit more into the discussion. When you discuss multiple monitors, you often hear that research shows you get more done with multiple monitors. And I agree that this is correct given the studies that I have read that I've seen on this. But here's a template for the studies. Here's a bunch of data on one side, here's a spreadsheet on the other side, put it all together. In that scenario, I do not deny that a traditional operating system with multiple monitors or a big screen where you can have two things side by side really easily and see lots of data, I don't deny that that is a better operating system for that type of work. But you know what? Nobody works like that. So most people's actual screens are what? You got Twitter probably off on some way. You've got your, for me, my actual code up on the screen. And I've got all these other things running in the background that are easy to flip to, easy to look at quickly, easy to do anything with because they're just sitting back there waiting for me. It's easy to have a notification come up. And some of these are true of iOS as well, right? Notifications, easy to have notifications come up in iOS as well. It's up to you to choose not to have them, which I've done on my quiet iPad, which we'll talk about in a bit. And don't forget, one of the other things that I continue to find is I have not upgraded to Mojave yet, is that Mojave comes up like multiple times a day and says, hey, upgrade to me. I don't want to upgrade to you. I want to keep working. That's what I'm doing. But of course, there's no dismiss this forever. Like, don't bug me about this again or dismiss this for a month. You got to click later or something, right? And you got to go into the app store and you got to come back out and great. Now, this is like broken up my workflow all the time. Now, iOS does this as well. When you download an operating system update, it does this in the background eventually. And you can say later and you put in your passcode. In theory, it'll update overnight. What I usually do is hit later, hit the passcode, and then at the end of my day, I do it. Because I've actually found that the iOS updates aren't as big an issue. They don't create as many issues with my computer, with my workflow as Mojave does. As Mojave or like any of the Mac operating systems. I get into there and I'm like, oh, I got to reinstall Git and a whole bunch of other stuff that just doesn't work under the new operating system. So I don't do that. So now I do mostly work on my 13-inch. I do mostly work on my 9.7-inch iPad Pro. I do have, just over beside me here, which you'll see in some of the videos, 24-inch Dell monitor. And up until very recently, I had my MacBook Air up on a Roost stand, the original one. Beside it as my two screens. Even before that, I actually had a third monitor over on the side, a 22-inch, an old 22-inch monitor. So I had three monitors on this desk. In my current office setup, I've actually moved to a one monitor setup. I have my Dell 24-inch and my Mac sits in a clamshell mode over there for the days I open it, which really isn't very much. So what I found though, when I had multiple screens, is that I'd have my main work up in front of me. I might have some reference work beside, but I'd also have like Slack or something else. And there's this blank screen up on my laptop or this blank screen over on the other side. Always felt like it just needed to be filled. And it like just burning desire, like there's extra space, I gotta fill it. So that was just a problem for me. Now, I think that we've fallen into some of this, at least, this thinking that multiple monitors is great because way back in the dawn of the computing era, it was good. It was like excellent to have some sort of extra, data that we could put on our screens. All right, we started out as like a terminal only. When we moved into, Xerox PARC and Apple popularizing the graphic user interface, those were like big leaps forward. Getting enough memory in your computer that you didn't have to swap out floppy disks, huge time-saving jump. Right? Overlapping windows at first were huge. There was a big increase in utility of computers. Big upgrade. I don't dispute that any of these leaps happened, and that they brought more productivity in the workforce. But what we have now is that we waste more time. There's an interesting study from Cheryl Connor. It's in the show notes. You can find it. And that employees waste a lot of time at work. What it really means is they waste about half their time at work, which is how I, as a freelancer, work 6 hours a day. and get like 4.5, 5 hours of work every day. And that's more than typical office worker gets. They do 8 hours and do about 4 of real productive work. So what companies are doing a lot now are using nannies or doing something else like that to take screenshots of your computer, which it doesn't really solve the root problem. It just creates more management for people up above to make sure that people are working. Now, one of the questions in iOS, or really in any, I guess even a phone, is that aren't these screens addictive? And they are in many ways. We are continuing to tune our brains to wanting more notifications, right? And I run my phone in Do Not Disturb 99% of the time. Even in the midst of that, I continue to find that for the little bit of time I didn't run my phone in Do Not Disturb, I still want have phantom vibrations. I can feel the vibration now, and my phone is right in front of me. As I talked about it, my phone is videoing this, and I can feel that there's something in my pocket. I might need to check it. I don't even use my phone in my pocket very often anymore. I keep it out of my way and away from me. So that's how I moved into really going iOS only, noticing that I was continually distracted, noticing that it was really hard to make better choices with the operating system, and that it was so easy to switch between applications, between Twitter in the background, right? Something you do often is when you're bored, you go through a cycle. I don't want to do this hard problem that I'm working on. So you go through a cycle of, I'm going to check Twitter, I'm going to check email, I'm going to do whatever, Slack, and then I'm going to go back to what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm on board for a second, and you go back through the whole thing. That's just not good. So here's my experience with iOS. And again, really, I think these are features of it, mostly. One of them is that iOS is a bit less capable. Even though we have, the newest iPads that came out last week, they are so much faster in some ways than the new MacBook Pros. They are faster, right? I think the iPad Pro 12.9 or whatever, it ranks as fast as all but the fastest 15-inch MacBook fully upgraded. Now, something I find in iOS, though, is that if I hold Command Tab, totally works. In Mac, it totally works. And I can Command Tab and Command V to paste really quick, just to switch between applications and then to paste stuff in. In iOS, it's not quite like that, though. I'll Command Tab to something, and I have to pick up Command, put it back down, and then Command V. So that extra friction sometimes in getting your Command Tab to work, to move to other applications, decreases the likelihood that you're going to make that switch, because it's an interrupt to the habit. The habit is harder. That habit of being distracted is harder. So that small bit of friction helps us, right? It gets that instant gratification monkey off our back. And the instant gratification monkey is from Wait But Why. There'll be a link to that in the notes as well. Now, iOS doesn't allow multiple screens, right? I have my iPad in front of me on my script, and that's all it's got on it. I can see at most 3 applications. I can have a split and see 2 on the main screen, work on them. I can have one that slides over. That's it. So I really have to focus on what I'm doing. That's all I can do, because that's all I can focus on. That's all that can be in front of me. I can't have Twitter peeking out of one corner, really. Now, also, I find a lot of workflows are easier in iOS. So something like my resize photos workflow, before I'd have to go to Flickr, find a Creative Commons image. I downloaded it. I have to go into Terminal on my Mac, because that's what had the best image compression as far as I found. And I'd have to run 2 different commands. I'd have to change a directory to that, I'd have to resize it, then I'd have to compress it properly. That was just more work than I needed. In iOS, I go to Flickr, I find the image, I download it, I hit the share extension, I run it through the shortcut, and I have my images dumped out for email and for my site. I'm just good to go. The other thing is that iOS stays out of the way. It stays out of the way in that with the software upgrades that you already talked about, it doesn't really bug me. All of my applications upgrade in the background as well. They just upgrade. It's very rare that I'm like, oh, there's an application that I wanted to use. Whereas on my Mac, even before I stopped using it so much, I'd regularly go into an application and be like, you can't use me right now. I need to update. Here's an update. And I'd be like, well, I just need to work. And then here's an update. It would never update in the background. I'd just continually have to go back to it and force the update on it. Right? And then invariably, if there's an operating system update, I'd also have to download Xcode because I have Git on my computer, and I'd have this big issue and I'd have to upgrade it again. That was just a pain in the butt, and it continued to interrupt my workflow. Now, the third thing that has really helped me with iOS is that I've tailored a lot of the apps that I use. If you looked at my iPad, you wouldn't find a lot of social media apps, other things like that, because that's not what this device is for. This device is for content creation, it's for coding, and it's for doing YouTube videos, which is content creation, for writing. So that's what I use it for. That's the apps that are on my iPad. I could actually see long-term having it set up so that I have 2 iPads. I have my work one, or maybe a 12.9 or whatever iPad I end up getting eventually. And then I have another iPad off to the side that is like my upstairs, my entertainment iPad, where maybe it's just the kitchen one where we have our recipes, where we have YouTube and stuff like that, right? Some Netflix on it. and that my work one doesn't have some of these things on it, so that I can use it to focus at work without even the possibility of having these other distractions. Because right now I do have them. I could flip to YouTube if I wanted. Now, iOS isn't all roses though. There are some limitations, and it's really mainly in software at this point. Looking at the capabilities of the newest iPads and how good they are, how fast they are, it's all software. It's just the software we have. We'll look at Scrivener for an example. So I write books. What I want to do sometimes, I want to export the book, and I would like to do the full formatting and then send it off to Amazon. And I use vellum.pub on my Mac for that. But that's just not available on iOS. They've come out and said, no, we're not really interested in that. So I'm stuck, I guess. I mean, Scrivener doesn't export, and it's okay. And I could use something like, Draft to Digital or some other service, and I can pay them to do it. And I can continually pay them for changes every time there's a change, but it's only okay. Right? Another issue that I have is I do some work for Asian efficiency for their dojo, and they use ScreenFlow as their template software to do other screen recordings and everything. So I can record my audio here. I can record my slides on my iPad, and then I still have to drop it into ScreenFlow and use their format because they want to adjust the audio sometimes. Mike is good. He's picky about the audio, which is good. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but he wants to make sure that it's good, right? You can probably hear some thumping overhead from my kids. He'd be trying to cut that out. Not much I can do about it here because I got kids. Now, if I was delivering them a final rendered file that, everything was just good and I could just say, here's the file, then I wouldn't actually need my Mac at all. I could do everything on here. I could record the audio, I could record the screencast portion of it, which would be slides in whatever, Keynote, that's the one. And then I could put it all together in LumaFusion, no problem. Now, it does make me an edge case currently to be iOS all the time, especially in the development world, right? Link to one of my old videos where I did, here's my iPad development workflow, and I do all of my code. I haven't turned on my Mac all week again. I usually turn it on when I need to charge stuff on Monday and Friday. So I have a couple $1,000s of charging gear over here. But there's still some questions that I need answered. So the research that I've seen shows, take data A and put it into spreadsheet. That's it. I'd like to see more in like a natural working environment where I have the possibility of notifications. What's the difference between someone who's thought up, say, Mac or Windows thoughtfully, and then someone who set up their tablet thoughtfully as well, their iOS tablet or their Android, whatever, tablet thoughtfully? Because that could be a difference in the research we've seen. So there's no comparison that I've seen, and if there is one, please let me know in the comments between tablet and iOS and everything else, and like what's the most productive operating system in a real world working scenario. How would you track that? Freelancers, I guess you'd have to use one of the screen nannies, stuff like that, and then look at the data over time, grade it all based on every 10 minutes and how productive you are. So for now, iOS allows me to produce more work with less distraction. I talked about this in my book called The Art of Focus in part 2 mainly, that being iOS first lets me control my time and focus in a way that I've just never been able to before. I produced more work, more writing, more videos, more of everything just by using iOS. It's helped me immensely in getting more work done. And I've been on this for about a year now, and I've continued to upgrade my setup and continue to make it better so that I can do this better. So I can have the different hardware tools, and then software is pretty close. There's very few software tools outside of, say, Scrivener, like I said, that really doesn't let me do, right? I ship articles to LiquidWeb, one of the clients that I write for. I ship articles for GoDaddy. I ship articles for lots of different stuff. I write all my books in iOS. And then at the last step, I drop it in development and I format it over on my Mac. That's about all I do. I use my Mac to archive these video files when I'm done with them. Once I'm done all the editing, I move them over to my Mac in what's a spry.zip, which is the LumaFusion kind of project archive. And I move it over and I archive it on a hard drive. That's it, right? There's a few things that I can use my Mac for, that I am using it for. I use it as a big photo archive as well, right? All my photos go through Dropbox, and I drop it all into Photos, and it's off on a hard drive, and it's backed up here, and it's backed up in Backblaze, and it's backed up all over. There are a few pieces that iOS doesn't give me, but by and large, it's helped me get more work done. I'd love to hear your experiences with iOS, with macOS, and any responses you have to this video on why iOS may, or maybe you don't agree, may not be a more productive operating system. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe. You'll find that just below the video here. Thanks.